Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of the McCove Mindset Podcast, and this is another segment of Collaboration Socialites. Today, our guest will be none other than the Mr. Brian Florian. Brian's a great guy. I hope that you guys enjoy too. Let's get to it. How'd you get started?
The first time I ever got the chills from music was from the song Light My Fire by the Doors. And my parents had it on a record player. I'd never heard the song before, but so there was just an otherworldliness about it. The very next thing that I played after that was Born to Be Wild. So those two songs, which I'm not even really that crazy about either of them in my current, state of what I think is great about music. Obviously I'd heard classical music, and I probably, was influenced a lot of that being around my parents and my grandparents. My grandmother was a concert pianist. My grandparents on my mother's side, they were from Vienna, Austria, and they sort of escaped, let's say, in the late 30s and came to this country. My uncle had a Hey Jude by the Beatles. And it kind of scared me in a way, because it was beyond my understanding of what music was, even when I had heard Light My Fire and the Doors. That suddenly there was this even higher thing going on. And then, this is my last early influence. And then I also remember being in my parents' car, and always in the backseat, I used to bang my head against the backseat of the car. I just loved it. It was like the headbanging before headbanging is ever even a term. I used to just bang my head. I loved it. And I didn't always do it to music. Sometimes I just did it because it felt good to just constantly do that beat. But I used to sit in the back of the car, and my parents always had the radio on whenever we were going somewhere. And that song, Both Sides Now, which was originally written by Joni Mitchell, but was later released by Judy Collins. And that song just gave me the chills in a way that, the way music does give you the chills. It just goes through your entire body, and it gives you this, it's a feeling of joy, but it's also a feeling of sincerity and of love and all those things that were in music. And so that's really sort of what set my compass point, I guess you could say, in music. I got into, rock music. Aerosmith came out, and Led Zeppelin came out, Van Halen came out, and I loved, playing that kind of guitar. And that's how I learned how to play guitar off of records, actually. I've never really had any formal training or anything.
You just used to turn the radio on or put the record on and just play along?
Well, I had the record, and I had a record player, and to learn guitar solos, we used to slow the record down to 16 speed. And then what it does is it just drops it an octave down, but it slows it down so you can hear every note. So, a lot of those Van Halen solos and Michael Schenker, Ulrich Roth, those kind of guitar players that I was really influenced by in the 70s. We used to slow the record down, and that's how you did it. So try to keep the spirit alive in myself. And now that I'm, working in this with the collaboration group, and this has probably been, of all the things that I've done in my life as far as a songwriter, this has probably been the peak of my life as far as a songwriter. And connecting with people around the world, has just been, an unimaginable possibility that would land in somebody's lap, like it has with many of us. Also an artist myself, and I write my own music for myself and sing, and I do have a lot of mixing that I've been doing, and I'm getting ready to hopefully have a full album. And I actually am going to do a single, which I think we've talked about. That's where I am right now.
There was so much stuff in there, and I want to go through it by pieces, because first of all, I had no idea, you taught me something, that you used to you could slow records down and then play them because it'd be at half speed essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, well, it was 16 RPMs, 33, 45, and 78. Those were the four different speeds that they used to have. Well, actually, I think 78 was the original speed of a record player. Because if you look at the oldest records, they're like these kind of medium-sized discs about this big. They're not quite a full-size album LP style, but they were just sort of, and then a 45 was a lot smaller than that, and those were just the singles. And then 16, I don't have any idea what ever came out on 16 speed. I don't know. Maybe somebody does, but I don't. But that was just an option that we had on many of our record players. You had those four speeds. And, it just, somebody figured it out. It wasn't me personally. Somebody told me that if you want to.
Right, but that was a thing that y'all can do. That's cool.
Yeah. So
that's really cool. So that's how you taught yourself how to play. That's a very creative way to teach yourself how to play an instrument. I'm self-taught on piano. So I get it. I never thought of that. I used some pretty low-tech stuff when I was beginning. I had remember the shoebox tape recorders? You could put the cassettes in. It kind of looked like a rectangle, had the speaker on top. Yeah, I have the tapes still. Just set them on my keyboard and press play and record at the same time, and recording them. Then I go back. If I go back and listen to the cassettes now, they're all warped. Mid 30 seconds in, it's changed and modulated pitch 15 times. It's crazy how cassettes really do not do a great job of holding recorded information. No, but yeah, it's wow, you could have slowed it down. I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
As far as my playing and starting my songwriting career, I didn't start off as a songwriter. I was a guitar player. I learned how to play songs, but I was mostly just a player at that time in my life, in my 20s. And
what do you mean by that? You were just playing playing in your room, your bedroom player?
No, I guess maybe let me reword that. I was playing covers mostly throughout high school and out of high school. Just playing a lot of the bands that I liked. I had bands. I actually made more money playing cover songs in bands than I ever made as an artist.
For a very long time, that was my experience in life too. Probably until I got into music for television and advertising. Yeah. It took me getting into sync really to actually start making money off of my music. My whole music before then was, I played improvisational jazz, but that's not necessarily making money off the music. That's making money off of the performance, right? So that's performance. Exactly. So I guess that counts a little bit, but the majority of everything was cover music, man.
Right.
So I get it.
That's what I mean by player. I was I wasn't right. I didn't even understand. Really, I didn't really have a concept. And I think many of us in perhaps American culture or, maybe just where I grew up on the West Coast in Seattle and Kirkland in a small town where, there was just nothing, music business, nothing, no introduction or mentorship or anything. It was just, you're on your own. You better figure it out on your own now, because there's no support for you anywhere. And there wasn't, and there still isn't, and that's what I really appreciate about working with the British and the Irish and a lot of the Europeans in various different countries, is that they do have much more of a sense of community in their artistry, let's call it. The artistry here, there's a lot of great bands, don't get me wrong, and I don't mean to diminish it to zero, but I think our culture is just a little bit, maybe because it's so young, that we didn't import a lot of that, the deeper rooted culture that perhaps the Europeans and the UK might incorporate into their consciousness as they grow up and are around music.
That's an interesting. I say that's an interesting take, because I don't share that same sentiment, but I wonder if it's also because of the genres of music.
Could be.
Because I think in different genres, and maybe this applies in different genres and different cultures, there are different ways to work. Because like the whole like Nashville split thing, the whole even splits, that's very genre specific. But then you also have like the underground scene for hip hop music, for instance, is massive. Like it's enormous. I think really when I think about hip hop people and like the way that they get on, it's community. The industry isn't exactly built for some of the culture. It's not built to say, hey, look, this is it's not sellable, is really what it is, right? It's not a palatable thing to most consumers, so it's hard to sell, which makes it hard to market. And everything that you do then in that subsect of music has to be on like the community level. And these communities, especially now because of the internet too, these communities are massive. I mean, you have artists like NBA Youngboy, who's like is never going to be kind of a mainstream artist, but has cracked the code to independence. I think there are more successful independent artists in hip hop than like any other genre of music. It's almost like, what are they doing right? Because I feel what you were saying, which is like, yeah, in pop music, there wasn't a lot of that sense of community going. Even playing out like with bands and stuff, it's like kind of like in the scene, and I played in the Philly market, and we're in New York and the Baltimore scene, and obviously where I'm at in Delaware and stuff, even in Jersey. Like, so that's a big map to be like, yeah, the sense of community is not the same in all genres of music.
You're right. That's a very, very good point, Kevin. And I agree with you, and I have noticed that especially like you said, in the hip hop community and stuff, because here in LA, I recognized that even a decade ago, because I would go out to some of these clubs, and it was entirely hip hop, I hate to even use like to describe it, but probably 99% of the crowd was black.
Yeah.
And I just loved seeing that community. I really did. And I really appreciate that you pointed that out. I think you could define an independent artist. And so those artists still had labels doing their work for them, and still had the promotion and small budgets, let's call them, but large enough budgets that they could launch, that they had enough of a support system, even from a label. But also a lot of those bands, the reason that an indie label would get on board is because those bands did have following. They were playing live or doing something right at that time, which obviously internet wasn't really available, so the other avenues and the network and the infrastructure was entirely different than it is now. So now anybody that isn't signed to a label is an independent artist, in my opinion. So
okay, yeah, no, I think that's right. I think anybody that's not signed to a label is what is widely considered an independent. I think there are a lot of people who are labeled independent who are not actually independent. Like you're still plugged in. You're still pretty plugged in. There was a thought when you even said that made something come to my mind, and now I lost it. You're being contagious, Brian. No, I'm saying like, has that been a challenge for you throughout your career? Because you just said how like you used to play live to get your following as a musician. Now there's alternatives to just playing live to build a following. You can build a following in a lot of different ways now. What was it like trying to build a following for your music when you were younger in your career, earlier in your career? What was it like versus what it's like now?
When I first moved to LA, as a songwriting duo, a guy that was the founding member of the band 2020. You were familiar with them? They had that song "My Yellow Pills." It was a very, it's kind of like 1979, like kind of during the time of like the Bangles and what was the group that did "My Sharona"?
The Knack.
So anyway, when I joined that group, or him actually, then we had a band, and I was playing guitar at the time. He had a following, a huge following, right? He could get any show at any of the top billed, Roxy, Whiskey. We played all those places. So for me, I just kind of fell into that. I didn't do anything for myself promotion wise, or I didn't develop my own fan base at that time. Anything. It was all done for me. All I got to do was walk on stage and play guitar and be a part of the partnership, which was great for a while, but it didn't last forever. And then I really wanted to be independent even at that time. So then I formed another group with a female vocalist, and we wrote songs together. And I was actually in that particular situation for a long time. And we wrote a lot of songs, and that's where I did the majority of my own performances. And we played all around LA again, played all the venues and everything. We did have a little bit of a following. Some shows we played to sell out crowds, and I loved that and everything. But you play a show like that, and you walk outside, and the streets are quiet, and everybody goes home, and you don't, unless you sell records, or unless you I don't know, because you can't play every single night and expect everybody to come out. So we played maybe like once or twice a month to get that kind of a crowd, but you can't hold on to that forever. And we weren't really making any money. We made like peanuts. We'd make like sometimes you had to sell tickets, pre-sale. So sometimes we would make $300 or $400, but we had to pay $200 back to the club to buy those amount of tickets or whatever. So anyway, that's detailed stuff. So
that's good. I mean, some people don't know. Some people don't know the live music hustle.
So there again, I had flyers up on street lights and lampposts and stuff. Had bulletin boards, that kind of stuff. So again, at that time we were a team, so we worked a lot of this stuff together. And then my songwriting partner had a twin sister that joined the group, and twin sister did a lot of stuff too. We made great promotional stuff and did all this. When that ended, again, I lost all my fan base. At some point, you just kind of become comfortable with yourself, in yourself, and take the good with the bad, and try to always keep your head a little bit above the clouds, keep the hope alive, keep the love alive, I guess.
When did you start saying, I want to be an artist now? I'm not going to just play guitar? Or was it after all of that, or was it during that?
It was during that. It was during my first, as I said, with the guy's name is Mike Gallo. He's very, he's kind of somewhat half famous, I guess. We had a songwriting partnership together for a while, and I did write a couple of songs. But I was mostly the guitar player, and he was the songwriter. So at some point, I just kind of said, it's just never going to happen for me in this situation like this. So I had to sort of. I didn't, I'm still best friends with him. It's not, we're pretty tight.
Right. No, it sounds like a cover band that was writing originals while they played covers.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was kind of playing that role. I mean, I was creative in I had some creative freedom. It wasn't that bad. It's just that when I was with Mike, it just became where I had so many song ideas for myself that weren't being utilized, and that I was just putting in my back pocket or sitting on the shelf, or just as ideas, as a metaphor. Perfect example. I love this. We got to do Afro beats, and I love the idea. I'm not against it, but I've got myself, Tom, and Enda, and the three of us, are three guys are gonna come up with Afro beats. The song for Afro beats. I find that it'll be.
It's something that you wouldn't typically do.
I wouldn't typically do, and so it's I'm happy to do it as a challenge, and because these things are fun to do, and you never know what's going to happen anyway, so there's no reason to be afraid of it. But at the same time, what I mentioned earlier about just having song ideas and stuff, for me, I probably would be more comfortable taking a song idea and applying it to an Afro beat, because the song idea probably just comes as a song idea, and applying it to a particular style for me is a little easier than trying to write in a style, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's just your workflow. Some people, when they do subtraction, if there's 2 digits, like 1's column, 10's column, they put a little line through it. So it's like 10. They put a line through the 1. They put a 9 above, over here. And then some people do the math that way. Some people will draw out 10 different objects and then say, let me take away 3. And they move 3 away. And then they count. Like, there's a bunch of different ways to do it. However your steps work are the steps that work for you. I think that's what I love about music, is that it's so hyper relatable to math because it's a critical thinking exercise.
It absolutely is. Kevin, you're perfect. That's a perfect metaphor. And this is funny because I do math in my head. I don't do it on paper.
And then when it comes to this, you're like, all right, yeah, let me fiddle it out.
But music's like that too. I do the numbers in my head like that. Like you said, it's a perfect analogy because I do, and that's, again, like you said, like different people have different flows of work. And for me, it's usually like it's an internal mechanism which is like mathematics, or like when you're doing math in your head. It's like somehow I just do it in my head. Like I work out what the chords are in my head.
Like, when did this part of your journey happen where you're like, I want to start writing songs, I want to start releasing music, I want to be an artist?
Well, I mean, my very first song that I wrote was when I was 19. I just didn't think that I would ever be able to write another song at that time because for me, it was just something I had stumbled upon and just got lucky or something. And that was that. And so when I moved to LA, I still had in my mind that I was a guitar player. I would say when I was in my late 20s is probably when I decided, I can write songs. In my earlier days was always more like a marriage and more like like you join with somebody and you just stick with it. No matter, you get through the hardest times that you fight or disagree or whatever, and you stick with it and you just keep on going. And that's what I did. That's what I've done. I did it with my first partnership, but even more so in my second partnership, because we were consistently writing songs with each other and we were both happy for a long time with our achievements, as far as songwriting, as far as like, I think I had mentioned at one point, we actually got a song into a film. It was an HBO film, but hey, it was aired internationally. So I got a little bit of credit. So it wasn't like we didn't do anything. It's just that even after that, I got this song into a film, but all I did was sit in my living room one day and strum a guitar and work with and my partner wrote some lyrics and a vocal melody, and that was that. There was nothing more to it than that. So it didn't feel like I put in this like long, arduous battle of studying and rehearsing and all this stuff to write the song. It's just bing, so
so it's taking you a while to understand that you don't need that. I think that what you just said is, first of all, thank you for sharing, because it's something that I don't think many people verbalize, but it's true for a lot, and at different points for different people. Depending on where you are in your career, you can absolutely feel like it's undeserved. Or because in your mind, you think that it's harder than it is. And that's not to say that it's not hard. That's not to say that sometimes you don't get lucky.
Right.
But in that case, it's still your win.
Yes.
And that's something to be proud of. That's something to, your win is your win, no matter how big, how small. You have to count every win is really what it comes down to. Every win counts. Not every time you play is it like the championship, right? But every win counts. That's all that matters. Count the little wins, count the medium wins, count the big wins. Just count a win, because it sucks to be in that position where you actually get a big win and you log it down as an L.
Right.
You actually get a win, and in your mind, you're like, I'm going to take an L for this win. Why?
I don't know. Good question.
Yeah, why? Like there will be more opportunities, but yeah, when they come, every single one of them, it's just like, yeah, love it. When did you really start to collaborate with different people?
This Clubhouse. When your thing started, I'll chime into this and see what this is, and my first thing was, it was the Christmas of 2021, and I had a Christmas song already, so I just tried to get somebody to sing along with me, and that worked at the time. But that wasn't a collaboration, really. At least I didn't consider it necessarily a collaboration. I just considered it somebody singing on my song. So my first collaboration, though, was with Zach and Shirley. Zach just sort of had a song idea come already, and Shirley just jumped on it. Oh, I love that. That's great. I love the vibe. Let's do it. So, here I am, like, going, well, okay, what do I do now? I felt useless. I felt like, well, what's my role here? I guess I'll just sit back and watch them do their thing. So there was no lyrics yet. So I thought, well, I can chime in on this a little bit. I feel like, maybe you could say this line here, and suddenly I came up with genuinely good ideas that actually ended up being in the song as lyrics. And, I've sort of developed a philosophy about collaboration, which is you got to know when to lead and you got to know when to get out of the way. And once you have those two things in your mind and you can work on that level, then you can collaborate with people.
That's a beautiful thing to hear. And I mean, really, it's also the reason why I asked you at this moment if you wanted to do a podcast, because you had a release. You just released something that came out through the Collaboration Social along with James.
Well, James did everything after. I mean, I didn't do anything. He did all the as far as the stuff to release and everything, he did all that, So I basically just did the music and I sent it to him, and then he did his lyric thing, which is fabulous. And I love that he did that way. But he did all the release work and all the artwork and everything. So I give him credit for that. I'm happy that he went through with it, because it's kind of one of those things where, there's I think the message is more important in a way in that particular piece than anything else. I mean, the music is great, but I think the message is just so touching.
I don't undercount how valuable having a piece of music an instrumentation that complements the lyrics in a way that someone pays attention to the lyrics.
I agree. No, I am.
It's a marriage. Yeah.
I am proud of it. Yes, absolutely. I am proud of it. Maybe I'm just judging it a little bit,
Yeah, no, you're counting a W as an L again. That's all. It's like, this happened, and don't do that.
Okay, no more.
Because it's a win. It's a win.
It is a win.
You guys released something. And for James, I think on his profile, Salvador, I think it's the second release.
Yeah.
That will live. This is an artist's second release, and it wouldn't be possible without you guys working together, without you guys collaborating.
Absolutely.
And that's pretty dope. I mean, how many songs have you released?
With the collabs?
No, just like any song that, how many songs do you have on Spotify that if I were to type your name in, you would come up listed as a credit?
13, possible, and up and coming 14. And then I have an EP, which is on my website, and it's on Bandcamp and SoundCloud, but it's not released onto a platform where it gets on the Spotify and YouTube and all that stuff. So
that's some catalog.
That's a catalog produced at home, and other albums worth of material that I've mixed about halfway through. I'm paying for the mixes. The thing that I really don't have is I don't have a lot of support around me. I don't have a fan base anymore. And so I'm just pretty much just creating music in a way, for myself and for perhaps my peers. I don't really have much of a marketing strategy or even this is a good time for me, especially with some of the recommendations that you already made for me, Kevin, about like getting a TikTok thing going and maybe getting a little like clip of a story about what it is. Because the thing you did for James and I, that little clip, that was so valuable. I mean, that was so, like, I would be, anybody that watches that isn't interested in hearing that is there's something weird about them, because it was just so intriguing and so, alluring and so enticing, all those words, and just like, I want to know, so you did great on that. And that was inspiring for me to get me.
I'm glad that it can be helpful. I'm glad that you feel like that. I'm glad you feel like it was an asset. And it makes me say, like, if your fans are your peers, then you need more peers.
Exactly.
That's all. Like, if your fans are your peers, you need more peers, because that's probably your access point. I think as artists, we tend to lean on, and songwriters, artists, songwriters, producers, in music in general, we tend to lean on the thing that we do as the thing that will bring people in. And it isn't always that way. And it's fine that it's not. So we tend to say, well, my music is supposed to make my fans. Maybe it does, and maybe it doesn't.
Right.
But what does? And if it's you interacting with people, then you got to interact with some more people. If it's you collaborating with people, collaborate with more people. If it's, and maybe that other person, maybe what their magnet is their art. And so just by association, you get a little bit of that. Like, you would likely pick up fans that are not you, like, that you wouldn't have been able to access if you just released music yourself. You're going to pick up a new group of people through James releasing music.
Exactly. No, exactly.
Is this your first time, like, writing on something that someone else released?
Yep.
Right. So this is like the thing that you have a credit for, essentially.
Right.
This is your like songwriting credit came from this.
Exactly.
And that to me is awesome.
Thank you. Working with this group, like you said, any one of these artists that we're got going, they're all good. These singers, a lot of the girls that are singing in this group, they are just amazing singers to me. I mean, just like, I don't even know I don't know how we got so fortunate to have so many great vocalists come into this group. With, I'd like to, Sam and Thea and Barbara. I'm just naming some of the women that I've worked with. Sibeli, who else? Cara, Zara, Bibi. All these girls, they're just amazing. I love them so much. I don't know if you heard this part, but I just want them to know. And Lucy too. I mean, I just appreciate every single one of these. Shirley, I can't stop naming them. But I hope I hate that I miss more, but I know there are more. And I'm just so, I guess I'm into the feminine energy in a way. I love seeing women in their power and seeing them have influence and having success. We've got a lot of that in our society right now, which I think is wonderful.
Yes. It's an equal opportunity space. So if you are a woman, you can go into this space and feel safe.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can go into this space and feel safe and collaborate with whoever you want to collaborate with.
Right. Every session that I've had so far, maybe 99%, has been with those conditions. Everybody's just become really good friends. We're all respectful with each other and for each other. Working with people that are strangers, in the sense that you've never spoken to them before, you still have a certain camaraderie that is sort of maybe an undertone with all the meetings, and so everybody seems to get along really well, and everybody's, for the most part, we can't all be happy 100%
all the time. Yeah.
So, but I think everybody if you would just relinquish a little bit of your expectations, you come out actually at the end, you come out, oh, this is actually really, really great, no matter what, so.
Well, if there was one thing that you could say to anyone who is in their career, something that you've learned along your journey that you could impart for some wisdom onto someone else, what would it be?
Don't wait for other people. Don't wait for people to get their shit together. Just do, stampede full speed ahead for your own, whatever you can do for yourself. If you can do that and collaborate with people, that's wonderful. If it's better for you to do alone or with another partner or a smaller defined group, perhaps, great. But don't let anybody waste your time, because it'll waste your time.
Because it'll waste your time. Absolutely. Well, Brian, thank you for coming on. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for participating. And that is just like, I'm glad I've been able to be here on the process. I'm glad that I've been able to collaborate with you. And yeah, man, I'm looking forward to the stuff that we do next.
Yeah. Awesome. That's awesome, Kevin. Thank you. It's been a lot of fun talking with you like this.